Thank you all for the invitation to be here. This is a beautiful campus, first time to Arkansas, so I'm really excited to be here and to represent a program that is a huge passion of mine, and it's an honor to be associated with the NASA SERVIR group. So I put a lot of my colleagues on here, so if there's anything wrong, you can talk to them. Just kidding. But yeah, so I'm Emily Adams. I'm the science coordination lead with the Eastern and Southern Africa Hub with the SERVIR program. So some of you may have heard of SERVIR before. Some of you, this might be your first time ever hearing anything about it. SERVIR, meaning to serve in Spanish and in French, is a collaboration between USAID and NASA, probably two very unique government institutions that you wouldn't normally think would interact very much, but we've brought the two groups together to build the capacity of developing countries to use Earth observations and remote and GIS data in their environmental decision making. So this involves a lot of bringing space to village, and in doing that we really need a lot of people. USAID bringing their poverty reduction expertise and development expertise, NASA bringing our Earth observation technologies, data science, and research to all these institutions around the world. So our list here of regional hub host institutions, those are our 5 hub various consortium members that they participate with, listed at the bottom. And we also have research collaborators both internationally and domestically, and private sector partners, and all together this group of people, or groups of peoples, try to realize the bringing space to village goal. And really the impetus of this program was this issue where really complex challenges occur everywhere. But in developing countries, though, we're very data scarce. So we've heard a lot about some interesting issues, pressing issues domestically here today. But really, it's amazing the amount of data that we have in the US and compared to some of the countries where we work. And the power that remote sensing and Earth observations brings to that in that consistent, reliable data source that we can help build the capacity of developing countries to use in their decision making. However, most of those countries lack the capacity to understand and use that data. We work hand in hand with these people all over the world to use geospatial technologies and manage that risk. And so our approach is a long-term partnership with regional institutions around the world to build that lasting capacity. So we have our hub institutions in these countries, and we work directly with them to help them understand and appreciate how they can use geospatial technologies for their end users. And that leverages the best US-based science that we have access to. So here's a nice map on our focus countries in Asia, Africa, and the Americas. So our most recent hub is the SERVIR Amazonia hub at CIAT in Colombia, and the darker green representing the countries where we have the most impact at the moment. SERVIR West Africa based in Agromet in Niger, SERVIR Eastern and Southern Africa based at RCMRD in Nairobi, Kenya, SERVIR Hindu Kush Himalaya in Isimad in Kathmandu, Nepal, and SERVIR Mekong, which is at ADPC in Bangkok, Thailand. Sorry for the acronym overwhelm, but that's federal government for you. And here's another map, and this really the strength of the network is being able to provide not only the best science technology to our hubs, but also to each other. So recognizing that pressing issues in one region also affect other regions, and the knowledge and expertise gained can be beneficial to everyone. So we look to manage and really leverage those relationships and those technologies in order to help build the capacity of the entire network. So we have 4 critical thematic areas. These are very broad, but we work mostly in agriculture and food security, water and water-related disasters, land cover and ecosystems, and weather and climate. And then you can imagine health, air quality, all of these things also kind of are niche areas that could fall into some of these more broad thematic areas that we've also been exploring. But really what I wanted to talk to you about today, after giving some of the context of SERVIR, is where we've come. So I've been a part of the SERVIR program for almost 4 years, and we've really transitioned how we produce, or how we, I guess, go about the science activities, moving away from producing data products into services. And so you can kind of think about the old school way of providing science as kind of this throw it over the fence activity, where you have whatever data product that you've created as a scientist in a silo or in your lab, and you're, oh, this is interesting, I'll publish it, and I'll just hope someone will be able to use it and throw it over the fence. But in SERVIR, we've really challenged ourselves to adapt our service planning approach. So this is actually a graphic from our toolkit, which is available on our website. But recognizing that in order to be impactful and sustainable to create these services, we needed a whole different approach. So we start with our consultations and needs assessment system, which all of these have tools and documentation associated with them, where we identify the problem and who we're going to co-develop that solution with. So we have our co-development partners with our hubs and the scientists in region that we work with, but we also have co-development partners in the stakeholders and end users that rely on this information. And with that, after we understand all the stakeholders involved, the flow of information, how we can monitor, evaluate ourselves, and learn, we start the service design process, where we collaboratively work together to solve this problem. And that then becomes realized with the service delivery and impact. And this is a very cyclical and iterative process. There is a African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. So I think this is kind of emblematic of that relationship, where there are many, many stakeholders involved in a lot of these decisions that we're trying to impact. And in order to have an appreciation for that, you really have to understand all of these decisions, when they're made, why they're made, and what information they actually need to do that. So I have a few case studies to highlight that. The first being how we have been able to improve an agricultural insurance system in Kenya. So the Kenya State Department of Agriculture, which is part of their government ministry, is using our satellite-based agricultural crop maps to design their agricultural insurance system. This is all Landsat, Sentinel, and field-based information that we've been able to actually identify where crops are and when. So we're working on updating these annually, but the impact of that has basically seen a huge benefit to the farmers in Kenya. So before we had this GIS-based sampling frame that came from the crop type map itself, the insurance program was able to reach about 900 farmers, just purely based on the mechanics of running a traditional insurance program, where an individual has to go out and go to the farm itself, do crop cuts, assess damage, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very high overhead activity. But by developing this sampling frame, we were able to reduce that overhead and get a statistically significant sample size and target specific farms, which resulted in a 70% cost reduction. And now the Kenya insurance program is able to be implemented for every agriculturally significant county in Kenya, reaching almost 500,000 farmers. And as you can imagine, in Kenya, farming is a very important livelihood to many, many people there. And now we're looking towards the automation of this process using machine learning and things along those lines. So that's one example of how we have worked very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and our partners in RCMRD to reach that impact. Another example of this is actually with our partners at University of California, Santa Barbara, and they've developed a really interesting tool called the Early Warning Explorer, which provides weather predictions and basically analysis-ready data. And we've done a series of trainings throughout the Eastern and Southern Africa region targeting specific end users to help them understand how they can use this data in their decision-making process, largely in the forms of these agrometeorological bulletins. So you can see here along the bottom is a picture of Zambia, where they have used this EWX tool to basically determine drought conditions or yield conditions and things like that to help inform their decision-making processes. And we've seen examples of this in several countries using EWX. Additionally, with a group out of the University of Maryland where they produce, or where they've built the capacity of people in the countries to produce agricultural monitoring service, which is basically crop monitors, both for the East Africa region and for several countries in East Africa, and jointly between the University of Maryland team and the University of Santa Barbara, UCSB, they've had these joint collaborative workshops where each service plays into each other, kind of recognizing both the cyclical nature of what we do with the service planning and also leveraging the network and the science that we provide on multiple levels. So now we're seeing the Tanzanian Ministry of Agriculture incorporating EWX and the crop monitor into their decision-making framework. All these bulletins are produced by the decision makers at these ministries. So this is not science produced by US-based scientists. This is not even stuff that's being produced at the Regional Center for Mapping, which is who we work very closely with as well. These are individuals in the agriculture ministry that now understand the data and tools that they can use to help provide better decisions. And ultimately, they were making these decisions beforehand, and they would have continued to do that just with much poorer information. They don't have access to station-based data nearly at the same level that we have here in the US, but that they were just using the best information that we have. And so we were teaching them basically that there are consistent and reliable sources of data through these Earth observations. So a few more points here. One additional activity that we've been looking towards are our gender strategies, recognizing that in order to and impactful services, both genders need to be at the table. So both men and women recognizing they have different priorities, different access to information, different risks, different vulnerabilities, and making sure that in order to provide the best services that we include everyone at the table to make sure that that is acknowledged. And a part of these gender strategies are also advancing and promoting the fact that are just women in STEM careers in general. So particularly in developing countries, there are even fewer women in science than there are in the US, and how we can leverage and promote the women that are within our network, and then also kind of priming the pipeline and ensuring that there are women that have access to these resources as students as well. So finally, last couple of points, really focusing on how we replicate and scale these solutions. That's another part of our service planning framework that we take into consideration. So I mentioned the crop monitors now being stood up in multiple countries and regionally. We have some thunderstorm monitoring and forecasting that was taking place in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region that we've extended down into the lower Mekong region. And also small water body mapping. We've been able to replicate that in West Africa to Eastern and Southern Africa. So because of our network and because of the way that we are conducting our service planning, we've been able to address this replicability and scalability of the services that we provide. And so my last slide here, kind of just in summary, is making sure we're building that lasting institutional capacity in our priority areas, co-developing replicable and scalable solutions for our network, and building the resilience of these countries to help really answer some of these critical issues that they're facing and will continue to face, and bridging the gap between science and data and end user needs is really our key focus. So that's all I had to say.